Today on the Brand Aid podcast.
To grow and scale a business, you have to be very choosy about how you spend your time. So with each thing that you choose to do the things that only you can do, and do the things that offer the highest possible leverage. So you do one thing, it's going to have a multiplicity of outcomes.
Welcome to Brand Aid, where we answer the question, what does it take to launch your own brand revolution, create evolution, and who are the people that help you foster connection, community, contribution, and currency for a brand built to last? You will also meet brands changing the world and the lives of those they serve. Here's your host, Cheryl Hodgson.
Today's Revolution brand interview features Podopolo founder Melinda Wittstock. Melinda left her career as an award-winning journalist and on-air reporter for the BBC and CNN to pursue her dreams as an entrepreneur. Melinda is a serial entrepreneur, having founded and exited 3 multi-million-dollar businesses. Melinda is currently the host of the successful Wings of Inspired Business podcast, where she interviews successful women entrepreneurs. Podopolo, her latest venture, is the first social media platform for podcasters, where podcasters and audiences can engage together on the Podopolo platform.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cheryl Hodgson. Welcome to today's episode of the Brand Aid podcast. I'm here with my guest, Melinda Wittstock, who is the founder of Podopolo and Wings of Success. Hi, Melinda. How are you?
Hey, Cheryl. It's great to be with you.
It's great to have you here. I've been wanting to have you on the show since the day I started it.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to jump right in because there's so much to talk with you about, because you have such a really amazing background and history of your life and everything you've done professionally and your outlook personally as well. So, but let's start with the most latest incarnation of the latest thing that's happening for you, which is Podopolo. And that's
Yes.
Being a branding trademark attorney, I love names. So this is a great name. So why don't you share a little bit about Podopolo, what you're up to?
Well, thank you so much. I'm a serial entrepreneur, as you know, and I mean, it got to the point where my kids heard me say that so often, they thought I ran the Cheerios company. They would complain about like the bad prizes they were getting and that kind of thing. But anyway, Podopolo is business number 5, and it's the world's first socially interactive podcasting network. And I've always believed that the best content is conversation and community. So this is a wonderful way for listeners and viewers to interact with each other, interact with the hosts. And the coolest thing about it is as they do that, share content, put lessons learned into action in their lives, and engage in like world-changing initiatives, they earn prizes, rewards, freebies, discounts, all sorts of things. And that's the other aspect of this platform. It's a mobile app that's also cool. It's gamified. So every part of the company is incentivized. And all the users and listeners, viewers win all these rewards. For the podcasters, we're the first to actually share revenue. So 20% of our net revenue gets parceled out to all the podcasters. Plus, in addition to that, we place ads that are topically relevant and mission aligned on their podcasts, both on air and actually on the app itself. And this is a big problem for podcasters. Only about 2% of podcasters ever unlock sponsorship or advertising.
Wow.
Because it's because it's a guesswork game. Because the data that's shared with podcasters is so insufficient. Like all you get is the download data. So the difference with Podopolo is that we, as people engage in all these challenges, we get to know a lot about them. So it means that we can actually match the right audience to the right ads. And you don't have to have a huge audience to qualify for the advertising, because we can prove to the advertiser or the sponsor that the podcast audience is actually qualified for their offer. So it's changing the game of podcasting in so many ways. I mean, I really think content producers should be making money from their content. And it's crazy to me that 85% of podcasters don't make money. So really want to change that. And that's what we're doing with Podopolo.
I think it's phenomenal, the gamify aspect, because, I'm trying to, I am developing courses. I have developed courses and I'm learning to market them. And there's so many people in the online world who are providing, fabulous trainings actually, and tremendous content. And now, of course, with what's happened in, uh, with COVID-19, people are working from home and more people are online. But one of the statistics, which was shocking to me, is that something like 95 to 98% of the people who buy an online course don't actually complete.
Right.
So the whole notion of gamifying and interaction has taken on new meaning and more importance.
Absolutely. Well, on Podopolo, I mean, because a lot of podcasters have courses and information products, just like you, Cheryl. So there's a paywall on there where podcasters can put bonus content and courses, and those courses are gamified as well, meaning that as people unlock certain levels of achievement, they qualify to the next module and the next module and the next module. And there's a social reinforcement and high fives and all kinds of different things where they're really tracking their progress. They're seeing the results of their effort. And we're applying that same logic to the podcasting world too, because so many podcasts teach really valuable lessons. And so, what would it be like to listen to a podcast, but then have a methodology and a way that's fun, that you can actually put what you learned on that podcast into action in your life to see a transformational impact. And so not all podcasts are teaching podcasts. Some of them are comedy podcasts. So
Right.
we're going to do things like one-liner challenges and like
I love
improv
that.
challenges and things like that, right? So adapting the different ways to just really engage people in community and in conversation. It's just so much more dynamic and fun,
Well, and one of the things that comes up for me, because I talk about branding a lot and how to connect branding to, your messaging and what really is a brand. And to me, it is a lot about connection, community, currency, and building currency with your audience, and when I say it's not necessarily just money, it's about building a relationship, right? That
Absolutely.
goes on.
Like having your community really invested in the podcast is huge. And I think one of the things that is fascinating about podcasting, it evolved almost like a broadcast model on an interactive platform. And no one thought to figure out how to make it interactive, which didn't make sense. So there were a lot of people podcasting like me to many, and then just letting it sit there, much like the way television works. And it was such a lost opportunity, right? When you can actually use this technology to engage people in interactivity at every step of the way.
Well, let's talk about that, because you have a unique background. You come from journalism and broadcasting yourself. I mean, you had a career, with the BBC and, so.
Yeah, it's a car crash of acronyms there. I mean, I started out as a print journalist when I was 22 on the Times of London, and I wrote about business and finance and then the media, and there was this new thing called the internet, and I got to interview all kinds of really cool people, including Steve Jobs, and nothing scares you, by the way, after you've written a story with Rupert Murdoch standing behind your back, watching every word you type,
Really?
in that case, a 23-year-old. But I was the type of journalist that always wanted to know where the story was going next. And I wanted to learn from all the people that I had access to. I mean, to be able to hang around at Richard Branson's house and watch him and do 24 hours in the life of, and I was like a sponge. I learned a lot from that. So I started out in print. Yeah, I started out in print, and I broke a lot of really big stories. And as a result of that, I started getting interviewed on television as a pundit. And then someone saw me on television and said, well, you should be an anchor. And so I became an anchor. And I initially joined the Financial Times to create their business programs for Europe and Asia on television, which I also fronted. And then I moved to BBC World TV. And I was one of the main anchors there through lots of big stories, the death of Princess Diana, the Oklahoma City bombing, all these sorts of things. And finally created a show for the BBC, a news magazine out of New York, and grew that to an audience of 20 million. and then went on to anchor here in New York for ABC News with Anderson Cooper doing the overnight shift for World News Now, which was a lot of fun. We had hilarious times because I like to say we had a good time because management wasn't watching. So we could do all kinds of fun stuff on the air. But then, I've always been very entrepreneurial, and it got to the point where I needed to create my own businesses. And so they've all revolved around media, social media, technology, crowdsourcing, all these sorts of things, and now podcasting.
Well, so how did you make that transition? I mean, what was the first?
Yeah.
I know you've been a serial entrepreneur, as you said, and it wasn't cereal boxes. That I know.
Yeah, I kind of blame Monica Lewinsky, because if I had to report on that blue dress one more time, I mean, I really thought that news had sunk to its lowest level, and boy, was I wrong about that. But
it's gotten even worse today.
Yeah, I know. But the big trigger for me actually was 9/11, because I was in New York at the time. And when everybody was saying our democracy is so important and we have to defend our democracy, and I looked around and saw that hardly anybody voted. And political news was being reported like it was a boxing match, and you might as well watch the real thing. It wasn't relevant to people in their daily lives. So that was the impetus to say, okay, well, I guess no one's fixing that, so I'm going to go fix political news coverage. And so my first adult company was Capitol News Connection, and it was a news agency that I grew from Capitol Hill and White House to more than 300 public radio stations, commercial radio stations, major market TV stations. And what we did was we localized news. So how were national decisions being impacting locally and all across the country, and innovated a really quite radical repurposing model where with a team of like 8 reporters, we could produce more than 40 or 50 high quality NPR kind of stories that left the Bureau every day. And we really focused on the issues, and we won all sorts of awards. I think it was like 18 Edward R. Murrow awards and
Wow.
Joan Barone Public Policy Award for journalism. We actually beat CNN's Katrina coverage that year. And so made a big impact in journalism doing that, but also innovated a lot of new ways of organizing a newsroom with repurposing and all these things. And it's funny because I look now at Podopolo and I see all the influences of Capitol News Connection on that, and then all the other things that I went on to do. But around that era, I started to get really interested in technology, and particularly crowdsourcing, and so created one of the first ever apps initially through Capitol News Connection, where anybody could ask any question of their lawmaker and vote the questions up the order, and our journalists would go and get them answered and then share them. And this app grew in 2007-8 to more than 3 million users in just 8 months. And I just got fascinated by the idea of including people, just regular citizens, in conversation around content. You see the theme here. And so the next one was News It, which was the world's first crowdsourcing app where people could create news together, and our back-end technology would sort that for relevance and reliability. That was way ahead of its time because it was solving a fake news problem that didn't exist at the time. Like News It would be like a good one for now, but that was pretty early. And then a lot of other stuff in social media tech and analytics and whatnot. So all these companies, I mean, they're kind of my lab. I look back now and I proved out different aspects of what I'm doing with Podopolo.
Oh, well, I'm excited. I mean, I've been invited, or I invited myself, I should say, to be a beta user in Podopolo. So
I know. I'm so excited to have you and Brandade as part of it because, everybody listening to this podcast right now, I mean, you're going to be able to not only interact directly with Cheryl, but she's going to be able to reward you with all the different ways that you get involved and put everything you're learning on her podcast into action in your life. I mean, yeah, it's awesome. I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah, well, no, it's a great experience for me because I'm new to podcasting, and in addition, you have the Wings of Success podcast, which is how I first connected with learning about you.
Yeah, Wings of Inspired Business.
Yeah.
And Wings of Inspired Business really started as a passion project for me because I thought that female entrepreneurs were succeeding in silence. And there were a lot of amazing women creating great 7, 8, 9-figure businesses, even unicorns. And yet the image of the entrepreneur was a guy in a hoodie, in a garage somewhere,
Yeah.
right? In sneakers and eating ramen noodles. So I'm like, wait, ramen? No, too many carbs. No, I can't do that. So I just really wanted to change the game and affirm and acclaim the entrepreneurial journeys of women and give women the mentoring in a way in a podcast that I wish I'd had when all those years when I was the only woman in the room. And I really had sought female mentors and hadn't really been able to find them and wanted to create an abundance ecosystem among women where we truly lift as we climb, like we promote each other and buy from each other and invest in each other and mentor each other. And so Wings, it just started with that in mind. I didn't even set out to create a business around it. I was running a totally different business, but it led me on this wonderful path to have retreats and masterminds like Wings of the Empowered Woman. And Wings of Success is actually like an online training program featuring a lot of the women who had guested on my podcast with their particular lessons. And it led me to creating the podcasting network.
Well, I have to say, and this is true. I have probably told a dozen people, women, I've said, you've got to listen to Wings of Success podcast. Number one, first of all, I relate to your mission and how you're bringing about the message of the podcast because of my own experience, similar to yours in a different field. You know, when I started out as an attorney, there were 15% women in law school still, you know, and so it wasn't that I felt like I was discriminated against, but there were not a lot of mentors out there.
None. Yeah. No. And also there was such a sense of scarcity, this idea that there was only room for a few at the top.
Exactly.
And so women didn't help each other for that reason. And
absolutely not.
And now I think it's really shifting. It's beginning to really shift because we do better when we help each other, actually, and there is enough space. But when we help each other up and really collaborate, I think miracles happen. I think that's how we're designed. We're collaborative creatures, and when we're actually in that authentic feminine, we do so much better.
Well, and I don't think it's you can't put it just on a sex basis, but I've jokingly said for years, men have the good old boys network. It's time, and I've been saying this for 25 years, when are women going to have the good old girls network? And,
right.
And I don't think it's conscious but I see it. I don't think it's conscious. It's just natural. Guys play golf on the golf course together, or they shoot hoops on the basketball court. That's how a lot of business comes about, right? Because they're in that sort of like, well, let's get together and play a round of golf, and they meet other people. And I don't know, it's kind of a networking thing as well. So women, I think, are now catching on to that. And I think support. So I just applaud you for it, because mentoring other women is just, it's one of my passions now, because I didn't have it, and I think really.
Likewise. I mean, I think a lot of great businesses and podcasts are created out of a lack of something or a challenge we've had in our own lives or whatever. And we're in walking through that refiner's fire in a way, right? We're well placed, having solved the problem for ourselves, to help other people up. And I think really the energy is kind of shifting, where women who try to be men in that old way, because I think because the only role models we had were men. So business was, do this way. It was inauthentic, and it didn't really work for us. I know so many women. I'm at about episode 500 now in Wings, and there's so many women in their 40s and 50s talking about being like that. I was kind of like that, but then having health kind of, our health just get wrecked or whatever, and not really being authentic. And when we learn to really leverage our feminine power, so our intuition, our collaborative nature, all of these things, that's when miracles really unlock for us. That's been true in my life, and almost every single successful 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure, unicorn business owner, that I interview. There's a pattern there to that success, and there's always that epiphany at some point of how to just come about it being a woman, it's okay. And I just find even with raising capital for businesses, it's much easier when I'm just being me than
Mhm.
trying to be someone that I think I'm supposed to be.
Okay. Well, and our society conditions us, whether you're male or female, but we're conditioned from a early age, as to what our roles
Oh,
should be.
absolutely. We have to unlearn a lot of things, I find.
I
You're
agree.
learning, but you're also unlearning.
Yeah, because you get to a point, just like you say, where, well, I wore the buttoned up suit and tried to be all stiff and whatever,
Hmm.
and,
Yeah.
and in your case, you were talking about Rupert Murdoch looking over your shoulders. For
Oh
me,
my God.
it was for federal judges, it only,
Right.
it took a few years of standing up in front of a federal judge, and it would, in 30 seconds, she'd be chewed up and spit out. From the,
Right. Yeah, an
and
English
like,
newsroom is great for that as well. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe some of the insults. I remember one of the earliest ones for me, and this is funny. When my news editor said, "Hey, Melinda, I can't do the English accent, but just because it's news to you does not mean it's news." So this is how management was there, right? So you get all these kind of witty put downs and things. You learn pretty fast, what to do, not to do.
right. And so you play by the game, but then at a certain point, I'm trying to fit into a suit that doesn't fit. It's not who
Right.
I am. So that's where I think the podcast thing. Well, I have a question and I want to move on, but I love this thing talking about your podcast. I think it's your skills as an interviewer, which is what makes Wings of Success so
It's called
uh,
it's called Wings of Inspired Business. I do
inspired. I
I
want to,
I
I'm
I
sorry,
do
I
have another
apologize.
I have a training program called Wings of Success, but the actual
Okay, well,
podcast is Wings of
Wings of
Inspired
Inspired.
Business.
Okay, I
Yes.
knew Wings was in there.
Yeah, I've got a lot of different wings things.
Wings
Yeah.
things. We're just
Yeah.
going to call it.
The
We're just going to
the
call it the
wings
wing
things.
thing. The wing thing.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll talk about Wings of Success, so you can share with that. But in the podcast, what would be one piece of advice you have, since you're working with podcasters in Podopolo, in terms of is there a secret to becoming a great interviewer?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So we can break down the interviewing quite a bit. So back in the day when I was in the BBC, I had the blessed opportunity to host a program called Hard Talk, which, if you remember the old Charlie Rose show with the black
Yes.
background, that's what it was. And I got to interview major world leaders and, people like Twiggy and sports stars and musicians and all sorts of people. And the objective in that show was to not only interview someone about their kind of biographical, their life story, but to get them to kind of reveal something that, they maybe hadn't talked about before. One of the things that I learned very early on is to plan not questions, but themes of the things that I was going to
Mm.
ask. Be very good at listening and being prepared to throw out what I'd prepared and be in the moment. I think the best interviewers are really good listeners. And I think there's some other tactical things too, like making people feel really comfortable. So asking pretty easy questions that make them feel good, before going into some of the deeper things that maybe you want to ask, right?
Right.
That are perhaps, and my podcast isn't really a journalist thing. I mean, back in the day as a journalist, I was just ask, if I was interviewing politicians, I'd be asking pretty tough questions to hold them to account and that kind of thing. So, what I do right now is not like that at all, but some of the same rules apply, which is the being a really good listener and asking open-ended questions. Like, some of the best questions ever are just very simple ones, like, why? Or how did you feel when that was happening? Anything that gets somebody into their right brain is going to make them get off script and say something that's a little bit more original and not something that they trot out on every other podcast that they're on.
Yeah. Well, I actually appreciate that because I'm a student of learning to be a better interviewer as we speak. And I've been listening to Howard Stern, of all people, uh, not because I've been a huge fan over the years, but because he really is an amazing, he can get
Yeah.
people to talk about stuff that
Anything.
anything.
Anything
And
at all, right? So it's partly about making your guests feel really comfortable and creating that bond of trust from the outset. Yeah, and again, listening. And when you come into an interview knowing something about your guest, right? They feel like you've done your homework, and that's also something that just leads to trust, and it's a sense of respect. The other thing too is, trying to keep it conversational, like you're doing right now. We're having a conversation, and I aspire to that always on Wings of Inspired Business as well. So it doesn't seem like, okay, I'm going to ask this question now, and then I'm going to wait for the answer, and then I'm going to ask another question. To just make it more free flowing. It's a conversation, because podcasting is such an intimate medium. I think listeners, particularly for the audio versions of podcasts, it's like being a fly on the wall. Like they're invited into, like they're almost like eavesdropping. And that intimacy, I think, is one of the things that makes podcasting so powerful as a medium.
Well, it's what has intrigued me to actually launch a podcast, is because I've always loved learning from people and about people.
Yeah.
And,
isn't that nice? I love that too.
And it's just, it could, because you learn so much and you're exposed to people and businesses, in say in a business context or any area, that you would otherwise never have a chance to actually interact with. So it's to me, it's really quite wonderful. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to overlook and give you an opportunity to talk about the wings of success, since I messed up the wings thing.
Well, there's a couple things. So the other main thing I do around the Wings brand is Wings of the Empowered Woman. And that is a mastermind, a year-long mastermind, and a retreat once we get back to having retreats for high-performing female entrepreneurs. So these are women with high 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure, 9-figure businesses. And one of the things I set out to do with Wings of the Empowered Woman was really connect people and look at the whole woman, because to succeed in business, it's not just about the business. It's like it's vital that you're on a personal growth trajectory, that you're getting rid of all the kind of subconscious blocks or things like that. You're aware of those and letting those go, that you're putting your own self-care first as well. And for women especially, struggle to really leverage in their business, if that makes sense. So we often run around chasing our tails, trying to do all things and be all things to all people, and it doesn't work.
Well, and we as women, because we're caretakers, that's the role that we.
That's the thing.
We're natural caretakers, but we also have societal.
Exactly, but to grow and scale a business, you have to be very choosy about how you spend your time. So with each thing that you choose to do the things that only you can do, and do the things that offer the highest possible leverage. So you do one thing, it's going to have a multiplicity of outcomes. But if you're fixing the links on your website personally, or you're doing your QuickBooks entries, there's somebody else who can do that at much less cost than the value of your time in your business. Because if you're spending your time pulling down a strategic deal that's going to be worth tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars to your business, what's your hourly rate when you're doing that, as opposed to your hourly rate when you're fixing links on your website? And so women often make the mistake of hiring too late, and hiring is not an expense, it's an investment, because it allows you to double down on your own specific, unique strengths. So these are the sort of things that we talk about in the mastermind, all year, and write about really the whole person, that you don't have to do it all to have it all. And what was fascinating about last year's retreat is, as a result of it, with our whole Lift as We Climb credo, is that we did something like $500,000 worth of business between us
Wow.
all. Like we all bought each other's things and we all lifted each other up. We got money circulating between us rather than being in scarcity. And I regard that as a massive, massive accomplishment. And I'm really excited about that. Wings of Success is a little bit different. It's a membership site and an online learning. And it's got a little bit of a mastermind too, where I brought together all the different women who've been in my not all of them, but like about 60 women who'd been on my podcast, all do individual trainings about all aspects of business, from mindset to mojo, all the marketing and sales and all of that stuff, through to money, everything from personal finance to how to raise capital. And that's really pretty cool. I mean, the number of like amazing trainings in there. These are all women who have 7, 8, 9-figure businesses, sharing their best stuff. So one of the things on my agenda is to kind of reformat that and move all of that onto Podopolo, where people will be able to kind of
Wow.
interact with all that content.
Whether you are CEO of your own evolving brand or you are serving as guide and mentor to other emerging brand owners, it's important to include legal protection for valuable brand assets. Brand names and logos, as well as other intellectual property, are often the most valuable business assets a company will ever own. Registered trademarks for product names, logos, and slogans are a potent weapon against domain hijackers, cyber squatters, as well as other later entrants into the market. In my international best-selling book, Registered Trademark, The Business Owner's Guide to Brand Protection, I reveal my simple 3-step process to help select, secure, and sustain protection for your own brand dream team. And I'll share how to bulletproof your business both online and off. As my special gift to our listeners, you can receive a free copy of my book. Simply go to brandaid.com/free gift to receive your copy today, and you'll pay only for shipping and handling.
You hit something near and dear to my heart because of my own journey in life. We all have our journey and nobody has a perfect life, right? But, and it's also, I think, the challenges of our stories that once we overcome them, that's what is that personal growth component.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's true. And like the journey of an entrepreneur, I mean, I make it sound pretty rosy for me, when you think of, okay, building all these 5 businesses to 7 and 8-figure success. And what people often forget is all the little kind of, it was a roller coaster to get there. There were moments, there was one moment in particular where I had like $4 in the bank. So, it's not for the faint hearted. I just tend to thrive on this. I can't not be an entrepreneur, but everything comes down kind of to you and the fact that as an entrepreneur, you can't control everything. So there's a lot of stuff just is going to happen, like coronavirus or, the big meltdown of 2008 where I lost everything and had to rebuild, from there. I mean,
wow.
There's all kinds of swings and roundabouts, and it's really with each pass at that, with each challenge, it's an opportunity to grow as a person. And these things help us. They don't hinder us. Sometimes when we're in the middle of it, it's hard to see it that way, but the best lessons often come from those kind of challenging things.
Yeah. Well, what would you say is the greatest challenge you had to overcome?
Oh my God,
along the way.
Probably my marriage. I mean, I really married the wrong guy. I'm highly empathetic, and I don't know what it is about empaths, but we attract like narcissist men, like, I don't know. And he, it started out nice, the proverbial lobster in the cold pan, but then the water gets hotter and hotter. And, he was a serious alcoholic, narcissistic, and basically gaslit me for years, which I didn't really understand the dynamic and my confidence, really to the point of humiliating me in public, at home, just constant arguments, making me feel bad. And I am such a positive person. that I just prided myself on my resilience. So look, I can handle this. I can tolerate that. I can do, but over time it really broke me down. And then when I found that he had taken a lot of my money and
That's a wake up call.
and a whole bunch of things, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
literally found myself in like basically a fetal position. And I look back on it now. I mean, it was terrible. I look back on it now as a tremendous gift because it sent me on a personal growth journey where I could heal the thing inside me that even attracted that into my life to begin with, where you get out of victimhood and you take responsibility for what's happened to you. And I mean, it's not that I did anything wrong in that situation at all. It's just that it happened because he was sort of a manifestation of the worst aspects of my parents. And it was familiar. It wasn't good. It was familiar. But having come through that and really gone on this real consciousness journey, I'm able to help so many other women, and there are many, who find themselves in that position. And it particularly hits very strong, successful women who are empathetic. I don't know what it is, but I found for a while after I was recovering from that and really getting myself back, and people who I hadn't seen for a long time would say, "Hey, Melinda, you're back." And I was like, wait, where did I go? I've always been here, but it was that noticeable to other people. And I was clueless.
Well,
Um,
it's I've been there. Similar
Right.
experiences,
I mean, so many women have, and we don't talk about it enough. And it's important. I'm helping a wonderful woman right now launch her podcast. It's called Vulnerable to Valuable, Rosie Aiello,
Great
and
name.
who went through very similar experience. Hers was more dramatic than mine, but I mean, she's helping women get through because there are different phases of recovery of this, but it's more prevalent than you would think, and really successful women who you would never know. And I know, like, I kept it hidden because I felt all the shame about it. I thought, oh God, if people know, they won't like me, basically is the root
Exactly.
feeling of that. So instead of telling people what was going on, I suffered in silence. And I don't think we have to do that anymore. But I'm actually grateful for it now because I can help others. And I'm so excited for Rosie's podcast to launch because in my spare time, I help people launch their podcasts.
I know, that's exciting.
And you asked me a little while ago about interviewing and the biggest kind of issues that podcasters have. And I think the main one is that people come to me all the time and their singular focus is, what kind of equipment should I have? And I'm like, oh my God, that's the least of your worries. And what you really need to be thinking about is, who is your ideal audience? What's their 3:00 in the morning moment, dreams, nightmares? Like, what is the thing that they need solving? And who are they? Where are they? And how can you make your podcast relevant and speak specifically to them? The other mistake that they make is not having a monetization strategy, not really understanding where the podcast fits in terms of its ability to sustain them or be part of a growth of a business, or where does it fit strategically, so that they don't pod fade. They have something that actually is either helping them as a marketing channel to grow a business, or it can be self-sustaining and profitable on its own and spin out related products, or it can come on Podopolo and get some nice ad revenue and that kind of thing, right? But seriously, it's a big problem, and I think it's partly a problem because people don't think about it. They go into it without having that kind of business and marketing plan around their podcast.
There's two things that come up that I don't want to forget before we, finish today. One is, and I meant to ask this earlier, Podopolo is Podopolo an alternative to being heard on Apple iTunes? Or
that's it's a great question. So we advise all the podcasters in the network to be on as many platforms as possible, as long as you don't give away ownership of your content. So the podcaster has to retain ownership of content. And some networks, you got to read the fine print really carefully because you sign away your content. So you don't want to do that. Cheryl, you know all about this.
I
So
would
lawyer.
be the first to say.
Okay. So read the fine print, but be on as many as possible because they're basically lead gen and you want to be discovered. Where Podopolo sits in that ecosystem is we're not trying to be a walled garden or we're not trying to win on distribution. We're trying to win on engagement and monetization. So we want you to be everywhere, but we want you to bring your listeners and your viewers onto the app to engage with you there because that's where you get to know them. We are really unusual in that we share all our audience data with the podcasters. Like obviously be careful here, their own audience data. So Cheryl, for your podcast, when we get there, you're going to see all the demographics and all the behaviors and all the people and their interests and their hobbies and like all that kind of stuff, right? You're going to be able to use that data to be able to take to match yourself with the right, sponsors and whatnot, because you can prove exactly who's listening. But you won't be able to see anyone else's data. You'll be able to compare your data to the rest of the aggregate data to see how you're doing relative to other people, or like how long is someone listening, or relative to the group as a whole, those kinds of things.
That's phenomenal.
But that's massive, and it's driven by a very sophisticated artificial intelligence engine in behind that, and a very sophisticated listener and viewer curation or recommendation engine. And it's very powerful technology. And it's like Apple and Google and Spotify and all Stitcher. They don't share any of that with you. Why? Because they're keeping the money for themselves. So podcasters have gotten really used to not getting paid for their content because they put their stuff all in these places. All those companies have the data. They just don't share it.
Oh, well, I'm very familiar with that because I've spent over 35 years as a music lawyer. and
Right.
and that is the biggest challenge the music industry has faced as things went online 15 years ago. You have still to this day YouTube and they monetize beyond belief for billions of dollars each year in ad revenues based upon content that's posted for free, but then they're very reluctant to share any data that's meaningful.
And this is the problem that New York Times had when, one day a few years ago, woke up and realized that the Huffington Post and like Gawker and BuzzFeed and all these other publications were profiting from New York Times content when New York Times was losing money. So, right. And this has been an issue through all of media, kind of for all of time. And if you own your own audience, you can make money. If you don't, you can't. And so this is why what Podopolo is doing is so disruptive, because it's really changing the power relationship, right? So we say to you, so say your podcast is on iTunes and Stitcher and all of that. So you'll have a call to action to incentivize people to come download the free Podopolo app, right? Where they can engage with you. They get the benefit of that because they get to know you. They get to know other people who share interests with all the other people who are listening to your podcast and watching it. And they get they unlock benefits, rewards, products, all of it. Right. So it's great for them. It's great for the podcaster. And moreover, it's better for the advertiser too, because they're not wasting their money. We take the guesswork out of that. So if they come to
that's huge because people pay an awful lot of money sometimes for some of these ad networks and the data is somewhat questionable.
Well, exactly. So like if all you have to go on is download data, it doesn't really tell you enough. And so most, advertisers require a podcast to have as many as 10,000 downloads per episode. That's 2% of the podcasting world. And if you need 10,000 episodes, it's only because they have no idea who's listening, or even if they did listen, how many times have you downloaded a podcast and not listened to it?
Quite a few.
Right. And then moreover, it's not tracking streaming data. So we're tracking the streaming as well as the downloads.
That's a very important distinction.
So because you
Vital.
can stream, right? And then also we're tracking how long someone's listening and exactly who is listening. And so that way, if someone comes to us and says, right, we'd really like to reach women in their early 30s who have babies and want clean household products, we can say, right, these 37 podcasts.
Hmm.
Right. So
That's terrific.
it's a completely different, just completely different equation.
Cool. Well, we covered that topic, so I'm glad. And I
Sorry,
know
it's so top of mind for me. I can't not talk about it,
I want you to. And I'm sorry to jump around, but I got to go back because I got to go to where my heart is. And what resonates for me is this personal growth thing we were talking about.
Right.
And you were talking about feeling a sense of shame. You mentioned shame when you felt that. And I think it took me years to get over mine when I, was partners with my ex-husband. This is many years ago. And, I didn't just lose my marriage. When I left, I lost my law practice. I lost everything, and it was a good 10 years before I rebuilt my life. And here I am, an attorney.
And that happens so often, Cheryl. I mean, it's the same thing with me, because by the time I really woke up and understood what was happening to me, my business at the time was failing. I had like no money in the bank. I had, I had 2 young children to support. I mean, I was a wreck. And my path started, one day I was walking around a Barnes and Noble. I don't know if they even exist anymore. But anyway, I was walking around and I saw a book that just popped out at me, and it was called Gratitude. And I just picked it up and I started reading it. It was actually written by the woman who wrote The Secret, Rhonda Byrne. And it had this whole really elaborate plan for how you practice gratitude. And seriously, like for 2 hours every day for about 6 weeks, I did this really elaborate gratitude practice. And to the point of, she'd make you go through all these different exercises, like write down 10 people, write an essay for each 10 about what they did for you in your life. Remember old people, people you hadn't thought about for a long time, your kindergarten teacher, I don't know, whatever, every day. And it really was a rewiring of the brain exercise, when I look back on it now, because within a few days, even despite being broke and having a failed business and marriage, in fact, I felt great. I was like, because I actually realized that there was so much to be grateful for. And that's really where it began to change in my whole consciousness journey. And I'd always been a big yoga fan, but I started yoga in the early 90s, but I really developed and honed that practice a lot more to be much more of a deep meditation. I spend a lot of time now really doing my business, really not so much as a to-do list, but really asking for divine inspiration and acting on that through my meditation. And things have changed so much. And I know that if you hear my dog whining in the background, that's because it's like, let me outside. I want to go play. So anyway, I'm sorry about that. That's Augie. That's Augie, the golden retriever puppy who
where is
has
Augie? We
strong opinions. I don't know. He's just hanging out by the door looking at me.
Well, I want to go back to what you just said and just zero in on this aspect, because, I went through my own journey, and that's not the purpose of this discussion, but it's, there's a aspect of the journey after you go through a life experience like that, and also dealing with your past stories, is that what was the missing element for me in my healing journey from some of those kinds of experiences was not recognizing that I was holding judgments against myself. And, I went through a program here called the University of Santa Monica Spiritual Psychology about 7 years ago. And it's a 2 years master's program. And it's over 800 hours of you're in the trenches, actually doing the work with your fellow classmates in trios. But it's the suffering we experience it's an extension of shame, but it's usually, I think, that we're holding a judgment against ourselves. Like, how could I have not seen this happening?
I was so angry. Yeah. So angry with myself. I mean, because it took a while to actually get to a point of forgiveness. I mean, not just forgiveness for him, but forgiving myself.
That's the key. And once you can truly do that, then you can start to let go. and
And
move on.
I feel truly liberated from it now. So as I talk about it, it feels like, God, who was that woman? I don't even know who she is.
I
Because
understand.
it
I
seems like such a long
understand.
time ago, even though it wasn't really that long ago. I mean, so what, 2013? So like 7 years ago, really?
Hey, you've come a long way, baby.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, listen, I don't want to keep you all day. We could go on because I just so
I
enjoy speaking
know.
with you. But I do have a couple of final questions. One is there anything I haven't asked you that you would love to share?
Oh gosh. I don't know. I think we've been pretty comprehensive. I mean, I'm just, like all my life, I've just always just sought to, I don't know, I guess avoid boredom.
Yes.
But I just really believe in just, for anybody listening, just dream big and use this moment of coronavirus that is sparking so much fear and anxiety and uncertainty in people to just look within and get really close to who you
Mhm.
are and what you truly want. Like, let the slow down be an opportunity. Like, find the good, find the gratitude in it, because it's really, all of us have a really big choice, I think, to
Yes.
make. I think this is the message from the virus. We have a choice of whether or not we're going to fall into old habits and old things and just sit there and like kind of do nothing or be frozen in uncertainty or fear, or we can really take our power back and understand and get close to what it is that is really the reason that you right now are here in an earth suit. We all have a special mission. We all have something that's really important that we need to do, and it's important, and it's an important time. I mean, the virus is also showing us all the things that are wrong with the way our society is currently organized. I think that's an amazing opportunity for
Yes.
entrepreneurs. We run in search of problems we can fix, and there are plenty of problems to go fix. I also believe that women are uniquely placed at this time to use our feminine power, our unique ability to collaborate, our empathy, our intuition, to really change the game, change how we operate business, how we treat each other, and find different and innovative solutions to a lot of the things that plague our education system, our healthcare system, our government, all of it. So I think these are interesting times, but they're also really inspirational. So it's just a matter of making the choice of how you're going to use the time. Are you going to create new habits that are helpful or fall into old ones, And so, and I just to say, a recovering journalist says to everybody, try and avoid dwelling too much on the news, because it will just lower your vibration, make you feel terrible. And
Yes.
the news will find you. If it's something important,
You'll
you'll
hear
know.
about it. You'll hear about it. Okay, well, there are other topics we could discuss, but that is such a great conclusion. And so I want to thank you. And last but not least, if our listeners would like to connect with you, or do you have something you'd like to share with our audience?
Well, there's so many different ways that you can come play with me. So first of all, download the Podopolo app. It's in the Google and the Apple app stores. Just go, it's Podopolo, Podopolo, and check that out. You can hit our website at podopolo.com. And then for me, I'm sort of everywhere on social media. So you can find me
Yes,
on
you are.
Facebook as Melinda Wittstock, or public figure pages, I am Melinda Wittstock. And we also have Podopolo Network. And I'm on Twitter as Melinda Wings and Podopolo1. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Melinda Wittstock, and Instagram, Melinda Wittstock 2020, or Podopolo. And also, if you're thinking of launching a podcast, I have a group forming right now where we take you through an intensive, you get to work with me in a small group, and you get your podcast launched in 12 weeks. And so you can check that out at, so you just go to melindawittstock.com /launch -podcast. melindawittstock.com /podcast if you want to do that. So there's loads of ways. I mean, you can just track me down.
I know. I found you. So thank you so much, Melinda. It's been wonderful, and I look forward to talking to you soon. Well, hope to have you back again.
Cheryl. Oh, well,
Okay.
I'd love that. That would be great. And you have to come on my podcast too. So
I can't wait.
We'll get that sorted out, and we'll geek into all things branding and law and business and all kinds of stuff. We do on Wings of Inspired Business. We spend a lot of time at the intersection of personal growth and business growth. So I always find that really fascinating.
And so do I. That's where my heart lies, because otherwise you can't do business if you don't get the personal growth done.
No, if you want therapy, just become an entrepreneur is what I always say.
Okay, well, you be well, and we'll see you soon.
Women entrepreneurs are changing the game of business, stepping into their authentic feminine power and growing consciousness to start and scale great companies. Listen to Wings of Inspired Business to learn from women who've been there, built that with 7, 8, and 9-figure businesses. You can connect with Melinda at melindawittstock.com. And don't forget to download the Podopolo app from the Google or iTunes app stores to listen and join in the conversation.
Have you protected your big ideas? Is your online business built on a strong legal and business foundation? To learn more about the legal protection you need for your online business and how to use intellectual property to leverage the growth and profitability of your business, check out our new mini-sode series, Built to Last. I'll be sharing what I've learned during my business and legal career and how you can use those lessons to build a lasting legacy for your own business. So join me for my solo flight on the Brand Aid Built to Last mini-sodes.
That's it for today's episode. Head on over to brandaidpodcast.com and subscribe to the show. When you subscribe, you'll instantly receive Cheryl's free special gift, Consumer Guide to Trademark Registration Services. This consumer guide will help ensure your most valuable business assets are entrusted to professionals. Make certain you're on the path to a business and brand built to last. Join our Brand Aid community on the Podopolo mobile app to win prizes, products, and cool free resources to help you grow your business. And also connect with Cheryl and your friends. Podopolo is free on the Apple and Google app stores. And when you go to brandaidpodcast.com/win and post a review to iTunes, you'll be entered into a drawing to win a once-in-a-lifetime VIP Brand Aid opportunity to mastermind with Cheryl personally to grow and scale your business, or to select, secure, and sustain a valuable brand name for your business. That's Podopolo on the Apple and Google app stores. Download it now.